Alright, now we're going to talk about style variables and assignments. So I'm going to create another Java program, and I'm going to actually use a comment to say what this is about. This is about style, variables, and assignments. So what should we name the class? Well, it's got to be named something, so public class, and let's call it style, S-T-Y-L-E, maybe variables. And let's go ahead and do assignments. Assignments. Now, if you notice, and I have to have an opening curly brace and a closing curly brace. If I don't have the correct number of curly braces, we're going to have some big problems. In fact, if I get rid of this curly brace right here, and I compile it, yes, of course I want to save it, put it in my Java examples, and I have to save it. I always have to save it exactly the same thing. Now, before I save it, notice something about the style of this name. In Java, you're not going to see a lot of underscores. In other languages like C or C++, you're going to see underscores. But here, we use something called camel case. Let me type that out for you. Camel case. And get rid of those right there. You can still see it, style variables assignments. And so the style for Java for naming this class is you want to start with a capital S, and then every word inside is the camel case. So you can just think of these like this next word, the variables starts with a V, and the assignment starts with a capital A, as the humps and a camel. So I'm going to go ahead and save it. I have to save it exactly the same. Notice that style variable assignments and style variable assignments has to be exactly the same. I'm going to place this in the same place I place everything else, and then I compile it. Oh, it doesn't like me. It says reach the end of file while parsing. Well, if it reaches the end of the file while parsing, it means I need a curly brace. That's all there is to it. So let's go ahead and keep going. Public static void main string brackets args. What have we got here? Notice at this point I have tabbed in. It's easier to see that this method right here, the main method, is inside class when it's tabbed in appropriately. So if I were to do something else, like do system out print line, say life is great, notice that this system out println is inside main and it's tabbed in. So tab has a lot to do with style. You also want to make sure that all your curly braces are matched. If they're not matched, let me take out this curly brace and compile it. Oh dear, reached end of file while parsing. Every time you see that error, you know that you're missing a curly brace. If I compile it now, it works fine. I run it. Life is great. All right. Now that we've got style behind us, let's talk about a variable. So what is a variable? I'm sure you'll read lots about it in the book, but a variable is nothing more or less. So a variable is a memory location. It's a place to put data. So let's write that. A place to put data. And that's all there it is. Now you can have, most variables actually do vary, although you can have variables that don't vary. That means to change. But the name, the fact that it's called variable, really has nothing to do with the fact that it varies or not. It's just a memory location. You have to put it somewhere. Where do you put that particular data? So let's start off with a really simple one. We're going to start off with a number. So we'll call it num, and say it's a variable. It's a place that holds numbers. Sure. And let's give it a value. Well, we'll say it equals 3. And because if you noticed with our system out print lines, you have to have a semicolon. So let's have a semicolon here. Will this work? No, it won't. Because it says it cannot find symbol num. It doesn't know what num is. In this case, if we want to have a number without any decimal places, we just put an int. Yay! So this, strictly speaking, creates a, oh, I didn't spell creates, right? Creates a 32-bit integer. An integer is a number without decimal places. And that's what an integer is. There we go. Now, if we look at what we've got here, we have num is the actual variable, and its type is an integer. Well, what other types of variables can you have? Well, for this video, we're going to have two types. We're going to have strings and nums. So string, I'm going to say str, which is kind of short for string. So string equals hello. Let's capitalize it. Hello. There we go. What can you do with a number? And what can you do with a string? Well, string is just text. It's just an H and an E and an L and an L and an O and an exclamation mark. It's just an array or a string of characters. That's all a string is. Notice very carefully that a string has to start with a capital S. An integer does not. We'll get into that in more detail later. But we can do system out println, oh, gotta spell that right, println num, and if I compile that, it works, and then run it. Life is great. That was printed out here. Life is great. And then I said system out println num. Well, what's the value of num? Well, I assigned it a 3. Assignments are you give it a variable and it equals something and the expression is on the right. So let's change that. We'll say num equals 5. So if I compile this now, it still compiles, and I run it, then it's 5. I can give it any assignment I want. Let's go ahead and look at this. System out println str, and this will have life is great, 5, and then after that, hello. Compile it, great, run it, life is great, 5, hello. I can change it again. I can say str equals goodbye, and then I can copy this. There we go, and it will now say goodbye. So life is great, that's up there, life is great. There's the 5 down here, which comes up here, and it says print out whatever the value of num is. Well, num was last assigned to 5, so it's going to print out 5. System out println str. What is str? str is hello, all right. And then we change str to goodbye, and we print out goodbye. Something that usually trips up students is why don't we have to put string here? The reason is actually pretty clear. It's the same reason we don't have to put int here. The Java compiler already knows what it is. When you created the variable num, you said it's of type integer. When you created the string str, you said it's of type string. So if I simply change str to goodbye, then it's fine. Well, what if I say str equals 4? Make str a number. Will that work? Well, no. It says it's incompatible types. Int cannot be converted to a string. It's saying this 4 cannot be converted to a string. If I want to print out 4 as a string, I have to put it in quotes. So strings have quotes, and integers are simply the value. Now let's see what happens if I put num equals quote 4. Well, that's not going to work. It says incompatible types, string cannot be converted to int. Oh, okay. So if I get rid of the quotes, then voila, everything's good. So that is an introduction into style. Notice how everything's tabbed in. We have a matching curly braces here, and we have our camel type here. Camel case. Let's also create a variable with camel case. Let's say I have an int. This is a really long variable name equal to -55. since this is just a regular variable, it starts out with a lowercase t. If it's a class, it starts out with a capital. And so string, since it starts off with a capital S, we know actually is created in another class somewhere else. So camel case, when you're creating your variables, start it with a lowercase, and then every word is a capital letter after that. And when you're dealing with your classes, go ahead and capitalize everything. So we've talked about style, camel case, variables, and assignments. Big thing with assignments, you have to match the type. A string has to be in quotes, and a number does not have quotes. Have a good day.